Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
This is an Evan Miller special report.
And a very good evening on this Wednesday, March the 11th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller. We start off with breaking news tonight in regards to the battle against Common Core. Orline Kurla in just a moment. But first, we're going to go to KBC TV Los Angeles with this special report.
This is Eyewitness News with live breaking news.
Breaking news in the debate over Common Core testing in California schools. Will the schools be held accountable for how students perform on these tests? Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm David Ono.
I'm Ellen Leyva. This is Eyewitness News at 4 o'clock. Common Core tests have drawn both praise and criticism. They're being used, but a decision has just come down to delay how schools will be evaluated based on the results. And Eyewitness News reporter Carlos Granda joins us now live with that story. Carlos.
Well, Common Core changes the way students are taught in schools. It's controversial, and for that reason, just a few minutes ago, the California Board of Education suspended the state school accountability system for 1 year, and that's to give teachers and students time to adjust to new standardized tests. Some worry that students simply didn't have enough time to prepare. Common Core brings a national set of standards to schools. Traditionally, each state has had its own standards, but now students from one state should be at the exact same level as those in any other state.
The idea is that if someone from California moves to New York, if it's a fourth grader, there will be on the same grade level, same standard, which it makes sense.
Common Core also changes how students learn. In this math question, for example, a student is asked if all the figures on the computer are parallelograms. In the past, the answer would have been yes or no. Now the student must explain the answer.
You have to learn how to read more, and you have to read all the parts, because there could be more than one part to one math problem.
Several districts, including Los Angeles Unified, feel students have not had enough time to get ready for the new system. The LAUSD released a statement which says, in part, releasing data that will impact high-stakes decisions based on early results will divert attention from the many lessons that can inform and improve practice. The teachers union, United Teachers Los Angeles, says Common Core has some good things, but also brings in more testing, and they worry that could hurt students.
Then when you start doing them every month or every 6 weeks, I mean, well, the teacher has to make sure that at least they do well on the test scores. And what usually happens is that the teachers are preparing the students for the test. So then you have this problem where you're teaching to the test.
And UTLA still hopes to look at the data from this year's testing and try to figure out a better way to help students achieve higher results. I'm Carlos Granda, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
And we thank KBC TV Los Angeles for bringing us that breaking story. And joining us now to respond to this story and break this down and tell us what this means for the state of California is Orline Kurla, SHR Global Affairs correspondent. She joins us now. Of course, my co-host Corey Evan also is on with us tonight. Orline, big news in the past 35 minutes from the courts.
Well, this is quite amazing, and I'm really happy to hear it. When I first heard it, I was thinking that they were throwing out the whole assessment test, but now that I've read more about it, what they're doing is throwing out the accountability part of it. So in other words, they won't give the accountability that I guess they're supposed to be giving to the Federal Department of Education that lets us know how Common Core is lining up with all of the other schools. And because they're saying that there are just not enough schools that are able to do this, and people are not ready for it yet. And so what they wanted to do was use this accountability index to say who was able to go on and be identified as a good performing school. They won't be able to do that on any of the schools, but they'll still be giving the assessment test. I was in hopes that the whole thing was thrown out, but after I've read more about it, that's not the case. It's just they're suspending the accountability system for 1 year to give teachers and students time to adjust to the new standardized test, because it wouldn't be fair what they're saying right now. Some schools would rank really poorly when really they have bright students, but they're just not adjusting to this form of testing. But anyway, so I'm sure Arnie Duncan is not going to be happy with this. He wasn't happy with California last year because we refused to give any accountability of how the testing was going. However, they'll still be collecting data on our students. This will go directly from the computers that they're taking their tests on, and someone is collecting that data, and I'm sure that will be sent to the Federal Department of Education, what they are using this for anyway.
But to be clear, Arlene, the schools are now, because of this decision, it's not mandatory for them to give these kids the test. They can still wait to give these kids the test through the 1 year, according to what the California Board of Education says, isn't it? Or is it still mandatory for them to take the test?
I think it's still mandatory for them to take the test. When I first heard it, I thought, wow, this is so wonderful. And then I read more in the fine print, and I discovered...
The devil's in the details.
Yeah, it's the accountability system that has been suspended, but the test will still go on.
Well, explain the accountability system for our audience, for the common person who doesn't have a teacher's degree or a bachelor's degree to be able to understand this kind of stuff. What is the state accountability system here in the state of California?
Well, what they are using this test supposedly for is to rank the school systems, to identify those that need improvement. That's what this email says. The board voted at a meeting in Sacramento on Wednesday not to produce an academic performance index for the 2014-15 school year. The index uses student results on statewide tests to rank schools and to identify those that need improvement. See, part of Common Core is going along with the No Child Left Behind Act that says that the schools have to be ranked. Those that are low performing are given 3 years' time to improve themselves, and if they don't do it in that 3 years' time, then the school is now rated as essentially not able to go on as a public school, and it becomes a charter school. And so they're using the Common Core assessment test as a way to carry out that ranking. And they don't... Of course, the ultimate goal, and that's what I've been finding and doing my research, is they want to get rid of all public schools. They want all schools to be charter schools, because then there is no accountability to the public, because the charter schools, for the most part, do not have an elected school board. And so a parent that is upset with what their children are learning, they can't really go to an elected official and say, if you don't change your ways, I'm not going to vote you back into office. They just have to accept whatever this board is telling them, because there's no accountability to the parent. And that's what we've discovered is what the entire Board of Education and Obama's administration, his Federal Department of Education, they want us to get away from representative government. They're doing this through our schools. They're doing it through our city councils, our board of supervisors, by putting them all under big regional governments that take away any accountability from an elected official. So I think that's the ultimate goal. But fortunately, in California, we get to postpone this a year. It gives us another year to fight this and expose Common Core for what it is and fight the assessment test. But it looks like the schools still have to take the test. There just won't be this accountability.
That explains the whole $1 billion... sorry, you go ahead, Jay.
I'm going to read you a quote from the California Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Torkelson. He says, quote, it wouldn't be fair to evaluate schools on this year's scores because the new Smarter Balanced tests are too different from the state's previous tests to produce meaningful comparisons. What is he trying to say in that quote, Orlane?
He's telling us that essentially it's also what this article says, that the assessment tests are just too different from what the kids are used to taking, and so therefore California would appear really very low in these tests, just as the other states have. New York, when they revealed the outcome of their tests, students went from the 90th percentile down to the 60th percentile. They think of themselves as not very smart anymore. And, of course, that's what got New York so upriled and upset about Common Core, because they realized how arbitrary these tests are and the results. They can essentially say whatever they want to say, and they figured out what they were doing was having the results come really low, so then the next year they would be higher, and they could say, look, Common Core is working. So, of course, they can't have high test scores to start off with. Well, I think, as we have discovered, they can essentially set the scores for whatever they want them to be, and that's probably what happened in California. They would be set really low, and maybe the next years they can show how they're improving. But I think California, for one thing, we're not ready for these tests because everyone is supposed to have a computer to take them. Not every little small school district has computers for all of their students. So this is a convenient way to postpone the results till next year if they do it next year. And so it gives us at least another year to fight this. And
well, what's our battle plan? What do we have to do at this point? Because, yes, they are still doing the testing. They are collecting the data. We have established that fact, I think, Orlene. But it gives us a year to fight because they're not going to be posting these results, obviously, if they've suspended the accountability system for 1 year. So what can we do here in the state of California? What can citizens do here in the state of California and other people in other states who may have to deal with this?
We can go on doing what we're doing and telling parents to continue to opt their children out. The tests are coming up within just a week or two. It depends what school district you're in. But by the end of this month, everyone will be involved in taking the assessment test unless they've opted their children out. And what I'm hoping is that more and more people will think, well, yay, they're not going to really show the results yet. Let's just opt our children out. And that will help them be more willing to opt out next year as well.
Orlene, I'm glad you were able to join us to break down this story. It's obviously not great news, but some good news is better than bad news at all.
That's right. And anyway, I'm just looking at some of the comments. I posted this on the Facebook page for Californians United Against Common Core, and a lot of the people are saying, yes, it means the test will still go on, but they just won't count it this year. And that's what union reps are being told. And anyway, we're hoping that
unions came out today. If people who were listening a couple minutes ago to that KBC report here in Los Angeles, they say the teachers' unions are still very cautious about even wanting to get into this.
I think you're right. And maybe one more year we'll get more of our union teachers and administrators to be on the same side as we are. That's what's happened in New York. The entire New York Union of Teachers is so opposed to Common Core, as are the superintendents, the principals. So they're fighting it big time. As the teachers' unions, maybe we can get more teachers' unions here in California to be on the same page with us and have much more success throwing it out of our state next year. So this is really good news. I'm so glad you're the one that broke it to us, Jason, and thanks for finding it and letting me do more research on it.
Yes, well, I certainly appreciate it. It's funny, folks. I usually do a last-minute research call right before, a half hour before the broadcast, and I'm watching my feeds here inside our newsroom here in San Diego, and boom, it just popped up right at 4:30. So, very big breaking news story, and we're glad to have broke it here tonight on the Evan Miller Report. Orlene, real quick, you're speaking at an event tomorrow for people who are up in the area that you're speaking. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little promo what you're going to be speaking about and where people can come join if there's still tickets available for that.
Okay, well, I'm speaking for the Napa Republican Women, and probably most of the people listening to your broadcast aren't up in the Napa area, but if they would like to come, they could just Google Napa Valley Republican Women, and they can find out. It's held at a country club there, and they can find out it starts at 11:30. And then tomorrow evening, the Santa Rosa area, we're having our Eagle Forum of California for Sonoma County meeting, and we have this amazing man named Trevin Lauder, who is all the way from New Zealand. He's written 2 books called The Enemies Within. The first one is about the enemies within Congress, and the second one, the enemies within the White House. All of the communists and progressives, as well as socialists, who are essentially running the government of the United States. So that should be really interesting. That's at the Flamingo Hotel in Santa Rosa from 7 to 9 p.m. And if anyone hears your broadcast and would like to join us there, that would be wonderful.
All right, folks, you heard her, Elaine. If you're up in the Napa or Santa Rosa area tomorrow, you can check out those 2 events there. And those of you listening in live didn't catch that information, that will be available on podcast via the iHeartRadio app tonight. Search The Evan Miller Show on iHeartRadio.com. Orlene, thanks so much, and let's have you back on Friday. I want to hear what happened at those 2 events.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much, Jason, and we will talk to you on Friday.
All right, take care, Orlene. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Corey Evan. He has some of the day's other news. Corey, take it away.
Yes, and I start us off in Boston. This one coming to us from, if this thing will work properly, CNN. It was 9:35 on a slow Thursday night in April 2013, and MIT Police Chief John DeFava was about to call it quits. On his way out, he saw one of his rookie swing shift officers, Sean Collier, sitting in his cruiser. He stopped to say goodnight. Less than an hour later, Collier lay bleeding in his patrol car after being ambushed and shot between the eyes. His car door was open, and his foot was lodged between the gas and brake pedals. DeFava and other officers, assisted by surveillance videos, 911 callers, and a lone bicyclist who happened to be passing by, recounted Collier's last moments in the death penalty trial of admitted Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. The bicyclist, mathematics PhD candidate Nathan Harmon, pointed to Tsarnaev and qualified him as the man with a big nose, who he saw leaning into Collier's squad car. The FBI had released photos of Tsarnaev and his brother Tamerlan 5 hours earlier, and they were on the run. But Tamerlan would not survive the night. He was killed in a chase and gun battle with police that began with reports of an officer down at MIT. The MIT police, who are designated as special officers by the Massachusetts State Police, patrolling the sprawling campus in Cambridge. Collier's beat was the area of North Quad near Main and Vassar Streets. He had been handling a routine call about a citizen who was upset about his car being towed. A young man called 911 about 10:20 p.m. and reported hearing loud noises outside his window. That's all part of what the jury heard on Tuesday about how Tsarnaev was found by police who scoured the Boston suburb of Watertown for the bombing suspect. Tsarnaev slipped under a tarp and climbed aboard the Slipaway 2, a fishing boat dry docked in a Watertown backyard. He hid for hours before being discovered. Tsarnaev wrote he was jealous that his brother Tamerlan had achieved paradise by dying like a holy warrior. He was killed the night before during a gun battle with police. The indictment against him says Tsarnaev helped in his brother's demise by running him over and dragging him along the road as he tried to run down police, Stay with us here at SHR Media. We will keep you updated on that story as updates come in. A spokesman at a Florida Air Force base near where a helicopter crashed says crews are still in search and rescue mode, even though a Pentagon official has said the 11 military members aboard are presumed dead. This from ABC News. Eglin Air Force Base spokesman Mike Spates said the search will continue through the night. Quote, "There's always room for optimism," he said. "The fog has been hampering our search efforts, and more fog is continuing to roll in. Human remains and small pieces of wreckage from the helicopter have washed because of bad weather, and the other crashed. There was dense fog in the area at the time. Colonel Pete Schneider of the Louisiana Guard said later it was unclear exactly when the decision to turn back was made, or whether that was communicated to the crew in the helicopter that crashed. The head of the Louisiana National Guard says the crew met a helicopter that crashed off the coast of Florida had a lot of experience serving in Iraq and helping humanitarian missions after Hurricane Katrina and the BP Gulf of Mexico spill. Major General Glenn H. Curtis, Adjutant General of the Louisiana National Guard, said Wednesday the crew also helped after Hurricanes Rita and Isaac. The helicopter had 4 guardsmen from Louisiana on board, along with 7 Marines from North Carolina. They also are presumed dead. Crews searching for a military helicopter just off the Florida coast have taken to the air now that the fog is beginning to lift. The helicopter was flying low over the Santa Rosa Sound on Wednesday afternoon, looking for any sign of the helicopter that crashed or any of the 11 Marines and soldiers that were aboard it when it went down. And we will bring you any latest updates on this story on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. Police are investigating the shooting death of a Bay Area mother in California who was killed while trying to protect her young son and daughter from gunfire. This from the LA Times. Shyamil Pierce was fatally shot and 2 others injured about 4:45 p.m. when gunfire broke out in the neighborhood of 30th and Linden Streets. Oakland police officer Frank Bonifacio said Pierce had just picked up her children from daycare when a violent fight broke out. As the shots rang out in front of her home, Pierce rushed to protect her 7-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter, yelling at them to run, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. The woman's children hid for cover and were not harmed. Moments later, police arrived on scene and found Pierce, a human resource specialist at Kaiser Permanente, suffering from a gunshot wound, police said. She died outside her home. Police have said little about the deadly shooting. A man and teen were also injured by gunfire. Bonifacio said they found an Oakland boy suffering from several gunshot wounds in the area of the shooting. And a man with at least 1 gunshot wound was later dropped off at an area hospital. Police are investigating the shooting and no arrests have been made, Bonifacio said. And I bring that up not necessarily to be in favor or against any fight against gun ownership rights, but really, this is a story of survival right here. The 2 kids managing to survive this whole ordeal without injury. God bless those kids. And on that note, we send it to break. But when we come back, the owner of several SoCal newspapers is getting ready to call it a wrap. Paul Ryan gets sued over one of his on the job. And David Cameron is showing his support of Jeremy Clarkson. I have the latest on that story, plus Jason Miller. What do you got in DC News?
Hey, thanks, Corey. Coming up on tonight's Evan Miller Report, senators unveil a plan to legalize federal medical marijuana. This coming from the city of marijuana tonight.
Oh, boy.
Over in international news, the daughter of Russian opposition leader Boris Nemtsov, who was murdered, says Vladimir Putin must bear responsibility for his murder. We have more on that story. In the UK, a female military health worker has Ebola. And Miliband and Cameron get personal in the TV debate rows over the Prime Minister's elections in the UK. All those stories and more on the Evan Miller Report when we return on SHR Media. Conservative media done right.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberty, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or follow my blog. Now, back to the Sackheads.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
There's the closing bell. Time for the business report on the Evan Miller Report. I'm Corey Evans. Nathan Miller will be back with the DC news in a few short moments. The Dow was down, but only 27 points compared with yesterday's 300-plus at 17,635. The Nasdaq lost just shy of 10 points at 48.49, and S&P 500 is down almost 4 points to close at 2040 today. There's a currency war going on, and the U.S. is losing right now, according to the Washington Post. As of Wednesday, the euro had fallen to a 12-year low, though, of $1.05, down from as much as $1.39 just last year. That's a 30% drop in 11 months, to be exact, and there's no reason to expect it to stop anytime soon. The Washington Post goes on to outline why a strong dollar is good for anyone who's planning a trip overseas, but how it's not so good for any Americans who try to set up shop in Europe. That's why stocks fell, with markets sliding into negative territory for the year this week as multinationals that depend on foreign sales took another hit. After all, it's not just the euro that's falling against the dollar, but almost every other currency in the world, too, including Turkey and South Africa. Those two fell more than most on Tuesday. And I will go ahead and send this article to post up on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. China's property sales in the first 2 months of 2015 dropped by the most in 3 years amid a glut of housing supply and real estate investment growth eased. Sales revenue, according to Reuters, dropped 15.8% in the 2-month period versus January-February of last year, the worst drop since the 2012 fall of 20.9%. The January-February figures are combined to smooth out the effect of Lunar New Year holidays. The property sector accounts for some 15% of China's economic output, with weak property sales highlighting the risks faced even to achieve the government's reduced 7% growth target. Freedom Communications, the media company that owns the Orange County Register, said Tuesday, according to USA Today Money, that co-owner, chairman, and CEO Aaron Kushner has resigned from his executive duties, a management shakeup that follows months of turmoil. Rich Merriman, a former casino marketing executive who joined the company in October as an interim publisher and CEO of 2 Freedom newspapers, the Register and the Press Enterprise of Riverside, will replace Kushner as president and CEO of Freedom Communications. Merriman will retain his current position as publisher of the Register and the Press Enterprise. Co-owner Eric Spitz stepped down as president and will replace Kushner as chairman of the board of directors. The management shuffle may be a sign that Freedom's owners are preparing to sell the company, media analyst Ken Doctor told the Los Angeles Times. Quote, the process will continue where Merriman unwinds the damage. His job is to steady the place and to get it ready for another owner. Yes, unfortunately, Jay, just another sign that newspapers are not doing well, and even when you merge 2 or 3 of them together, it doesn't always work. Since Kushner took over, even the Freedom Press, the the Freedom newspaper has shut down after 5 months of him being there, and they're not being able to maintain staffing levels at the Orange County Register or the Press Enterprise. I'm not surprised.
Well, Corey, when it comes down to it, when newspapers start losing their local identity and start being controlled by corporations per se, people don't exactly like that too much because they lose the local feel. Not only do they lose the local feel in the reporting, they also lose the local feel when it comes to the advertising because the advertising doesn't come into that proper area. And that is the problem why national newspapers are on the downtrend, and some of them are either going out of business or having to move their operations to online because of the failing industry. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, more people now are getting news off the internet, watching television, listening to radio, and a lot of people, they don't want to even waste the time in buying the newspaper. Who buys the newspaper these days? I can tell you, people who are age 55 plus, or people like us within the news industry who actually read op-eds and read the newspaper for actual information in developing our news stories day in and day out.
Right, and of course that would explain why I got LA ads in my Riverside paper the other day, but of course there's always a chance I'll be in LA on Saturday and might just be able to use that coupon after all. But of course that's a bit far-fetched.
Indeed.
But you could even far-fetch your travels this summer. The spring travel season, according to Time magazine, could see U.S. airlines post their highest passenger numbers in 7 years, bolstered by rising employment, they say, and personal incomes, say industry group Airlines for America. Some 134.8 million passengers, or about 2.2 million people a day, are projected to fly in March and April, according to a press release. If it turns out to be accurate, that would be the most since 2007, before the financial crisis. The 2015 projections are a 2% boost from the 132.2 million who flew on U.S. airlines during the same period last year. John Heimlich, Airlines for America VP and chief economist, said high consumer sentiment and the continued affordability of air travel may contribute to a busy travel season ahead. And I don't know if you've got any travel plans coming up this season, Jake, but with my wedding coming up, we're planning to go to Yellowstone, so of course we'll be booking a flight.
Ooh, Yellowstone sounds beautiful, Corey.
Yeah, I'll send you pictures from Old Faithful.
Or else that bear Marsha might come out of the cave and eat your brand new car.
Marsha! Yes, of course we had to do a little quote from the Brady Bunch because Jay's just on a tangent about it lately. Take it away, Jay.
I'm gonna finish it.
Yes, take it away. You got the DC news.
Yes, I got the DC news coming up in just a moment, but first, the international news in brief here. The daughter of Russian opposition leader Boris Nemtsov says Vladimir Putin must bear responsibility for his murder. Zayna Nemtsov told BBC News she believed the Russian president was politically to blame. Mr. Nemtsov, a former deputy prime minister and veteran liberal politician, was shot dead back on February the 27th while walking with his girlfriend near the Kremlin. President Putin has condemned the murder and vowed to find the killers. Staying in Russia, the United States has asked the country of Vietnam to stop letting Russia use a former U.S. base to refuel nuclear-capable bombers engaged in shows of strength over the Asia-Pacific region, exposing strains in Washington's steadily warming relations with Hanoi. The request, described to Reuters and ITN by a State Department official, comes as U.S. officials say Russian bombers have stepped up flights in a region already rife with tensions between China, U.S. ally Japan, and Southeast Asia regions. A female British military healthcare worker in Sierra Leone has tested positive for the Ebola disease. She is currently being treated in the Carytown Treatment Unit in the UK, and her next of kin have been informed. Public Health Care England has said that medical experts were making sure appropriate care was being delivered. A decision on whether she will be evacuated to the UK for treatment has not been yet made. The Ministry of Defense said between 600 and 700 of their personnel were currently working in Sierra Leone in connection with the Ebola crisis. Ed Miliband and David Cameron lodged attacks on each other's character in an angry comments exchanges over televised debates. The Labour leader accused the Prime Minister of chickening out of a debate. Mr. Cameron attacked Mr. Miliband as despicable and weak. It came amid a fresh effort to break the TV debate deadlock that is currently happening before the Prime Minister general elections in May of this year. YouTube, The Guardian, and Daily Telegraph have offered to bring forward the proposed date of an online debate which would include the leaders of the Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems, UKIP, and the Greens to either 26 or 27, either on the 26th or 27th of March. In an effort to meet the Prime Minister's demands, any debate that happens before the official campaign begins on March the 30th. Downing Street says it will look at the proposals. Here's a listen at what happened at the debates, at Prime Minister's questions this morning in the UK.
Can we dare take it that there are no circumstances, Mr. Speaker, these are pathetic, feeble excuses. Can we dare take it that there are no circumstances that he will debate me head-to-head between now and the general election?
We've had 4 years of debates and we found out he's got no policies, he's got no plan, he's got no team, he's got no clue of running the country. But the truth, Mr. Speaker, is this. Labour are now saying they cannot win the election. Here is the leaflet they put out in Scotland. I think the SNP might be interested in this. At the general election, we need to stop the Tories being the largest party. They're not trying to win, they're just trying to crawl through the gates of Downing Street on the coattails of the SNP. So what he's got to do is prove that he's not a chicken and rule that out.
Yeah, there's only one person preparing for defeat, and it's this Prime Minister. Now, he's not going to be able to wriggle off this. This is what he said before the last general election. He said this: we have the opportunity to debate at Prime Minister's questions, but that is a very different matter to a proper television debate during a general election campaign. And he said this: when Parliament is not sitting and when people will be most receptive to engaging in political discussion. Now, Mr. Speaker, we know he lost to the Deputy Prime Minister last time. Why doesn't he just cut out the feeble excuses and admit the truth? He's worried he might lose again.
Quite amazing. He wants to talk about the future of a television programme. I want to talk about the future of the country. Four questions 3 weeks to go. He can't talk about jobs because we're growing jobs. He can't talk about unemployment because unemployment's plummeting. He can't talk about inflation because it's at a record low. The truth is, he's weak and despicable and wants to crawl to power in Alex Salmond's pocket.
Mr. Speaker, if he's so confident, why is he chickening out of the debates with me? Everyone can see it. And Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you why this matters. Because it goes to his character. It goes to his character. Because the public will see through his feeble excuses. Instead of these ridiculous tactics, why doesn't he show a bit more backbone and turn up for the head-to-head debate with me anytime, anywhere, any place?
Tell him what goes to character. Someone who is prepared to crawl into Downing Street in alliance with people who want to break up the future of our country. What a despicable and weak thing to do. Risking our defences, risking our country, risking our United Kingdom. If he had an ounce of courage, he'd rule it out.
There's only one person who's a risk to the integrity of the United Kingdom, and it's this useless Prime Minister.
Yeah.
that question will be heard. The noise calculatedly being made by some members on both sides of the House is a disgrace to the House of Commons. The right honourable gentleman will be heard and the Prime Minister will be heard. That is the end of the matter. Ed Miliband.
Speaker, there's only one person who's a risk to the integrity of our country, and that is this Prime Minister. And on the head-to-head debates, we've learned something about him, Mr. Speaker, because like all bullies, when the heat's really on, he runs for cover.
He's been offered a debate and he won't take it. Anytime, any place, anywhere, but he won't take it. The truth is, they've got nothing to say on policy, nothing to say on the economy. The only way into Downing Street is on Alex Salmond's coattails.
And that was just part of this morning's Prime Minister's questions over in the UK between David Cameron and Labour Minister Ed Miliband. And Corey, my goodness, if you think DC news gets crazy, you look at UK politics, my goodness, it's like going to a movie and grabbing a pot of popcorn, because that's some enjoyable stuff to watch right there.
Yes, and you may just end up going for the free refill on that popcorn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely right on that, ladies.
Don't forget the butter.
Oh, definitely don't forget the butter. But we'll keep you up to date on those Prime Minister's general elections in May here on the Evan Miller Report. Stay tuned for that. Wrapping up our international news before we get over to the D.C. news, a Melbourne schoolboy who traveled to the Middle East to fight with Islamic State has reportedly died in a suicide attack in Iraq. Jake Billard, 18, left Australia last year and flew via Turkey to Iraq, arriving in late summer. An image emerged on Wednesday purportedly showing him behind the wheel of a white van with the caption, "May God accept him." Jake Billard told BBC News back in December he wanted to die in a suicide attack. Speaking to BBC Newsnight reporter, he said he had traveled to Iraq to become a martyr. He said, quote, "I've been waiting for almost 1 month now, and I'm next to go, so Islam, God willing, it'll be soon. I came here chasing death. I might as well kill as many infidels as I can." Asked if he would be allowed to change his mind if he wanted, he said, "Yes, of course, it's your life. If you don't want to do it, you just say so." The teenager was identified by Australia's Fairfax Media last week. A member of an Islamic youth center in Melbourne told Fairfax he was a very quiet guy who stuck to himself. Just a disturbing story right there out of Australia, ladies and gentlemen. Colombia is to halt bombing raids against left-wing FARC rebels for a month, President Juan Manuel Santos said in a further sign of progress in the country's peace process. Mr. Santos said the move was in recognition of the fact a unilateral ceasefire declared by FARC was holding, but operations against another guerrilla group, the National Liberation Army, will continue. Colombia's government and FARC are currently holding peace talks in Cuba. A congressional hearing in Brazil has been told that the governing Workers' Party of President Dilma Rousseff received up to $200 million skimmed from contracts with the state-owned oil company Petronas. The accusation was made by a former Petronas executive, Pedro Benechenko. He alleged the current treasurer of the Workers' Party had been involved in the scheme. The Workers' Party has said it only received legal donations. President Rousseff, who chaired Petronas' board for 7 years when much of the corruption is alleged to have taken place, has denied any knowledge of it. All right, folks, time to get over to the D.C. news now. Americans' confidence in all three branches of government is at or near record lows, according to a major survey that has measured attitudes on the subject for 40 years. The 2014 General Social Survey only finds 23% of Americans have a great deal of confidence in the Supreme Court, 11% in the executive branch, and 5% in Congress. By contrast, half have a great deal of confidence in the U.S. military. The survey is conducted by the independent research organization NORCE, the University of Chicago, because of its long-running and comprehensive set of questions about the public. It is a highly regarded source of data about social trends. Data from the 2014 survey was released last week, and an analysis of its findings on confidence in institutions was conducted by the Associated Press Newark Center for Public Affairs Research and the General Social Survey. Moving on tonight, more than 155,000 people have signed a petition today to the White House urging charges to be filed against 47 Republican senators who they say have committed treasonous offenses by writing Iran's leaders about ongoing nuclear negotiations. And you thought global socialism was bad today. Just get a load of this story and drink a few sherbets afterwards. You might need them. Lawmakers caused a political furor with, according to some, with their controversial letter Monday that warned of an international nuclear deal with Iran could be scrapped by the next U.S. president, particularly if Congress does not give it its seal of approval. The White House said it responds to such petitions when they reach 100,000 signature threshold, providing President Obama's administration with another opportunity to slam a letter that it considers inflammatory. According to the petition, the 47 senators committed a treasonous offense when they decided to violate the Logan Act, a supposed 1799 law which forbids unauthorized citizens from negotiating with foreign governments. Critics argue that lawmakers, including at least three potential GOP 2016 presidential candidates, broke the law or at least violated the traditions of Congress by directly engaging with a foreign power on U.S. foreign policy. Obama and Vice President Joe Biden pillared the letter, as did several Democratic congressional leaders. Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif has called it unprecedented and undiplomatic. With no one indicted under the Logan Act since 1803 and zero successful prosecutions under that law, it is highly unlikely that the 47 lawmakers mentioned are going to prison anytime soon. And as I think, Corey Evan, I don't think they should. They are stating to the full fact that if the president decides to act unilaterally in passing a bad deal with Iran that will put U.S. American lives at risk and our relationship with Israel cause it to be damaged, I think our politicians over in Congress, the 47 mentioned, are doing a very good thing in trying to protect the American people. So, I'm no lawyer, but you know what? They can shove the Logan Act back up Obama's legal department's you-know-what.
Yeah, I know, right? I was actually discussing this with a coworker who doesn't seem to agree with the U.S. side of things, that he thought that Iran getting a hold of nuclear materials wouldn't necessarily mean a nuclear bomb, but I was telling him that all of these things lay down the potential, but hopefully one of these times we'll be able to drill into his head exactly why a nuclear bomb coming out of Iran could just be the end of you and me.
Indeed. All right, finally, before we send it off to Corey for tonight's lawsuits across America, Republican Senator Rand Paul has joined Democrat Senators Cory Booker and Kristen Gillibrand Tuesday to propose legalization to legalize medical marijuana. This coming from the city of marijuana. Oh, yes. The bill, termed the Compassionate Access Research Expansion and Respect States Act, would move marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, allow access for veterans, and put a final stop to federal raids on dispensaries, among other things. This is the first.
Can I buy a vowel?
You may.
An A.
It's asinine, man! Why are these
politicians
doing this?
Do continue.
This is the first time a medical marijuana bill has been introduced in the Senate, whereas the House has seen 15 pieces of legislation on marijuana reform in the last session of Congress, according to the website marijuana.com. The move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 would mean federal regulatory recognition that marijuana has a medicinal value, but also has a high abuse potential. This is an absolutely groundbreaking moment, said Leslie Bushker, managing partner of Electron Partners, who talked to the Daily Caller's News Foundation. She continued to say, whether it passes or not, the fact that it still exists it is an important step in proposing to reschedule marijuana. The senators are also acknowledging the pre-existence of the marijuana manufacturing industry by including a provision on financial services and enforcement. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we may become the United States of marijuana. Stay tuned.
And now it's time for Lawsuits Across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and come to order session. It's the ultimate ruse. Lure in millions of customers with a, quote, free dating app. Get them hooked.
Alright, looks like we lost Corey Evan there. Hopefully we can get him back, and when we get him back, we'll be doing hopefully get to Lawsuits Across America. Since we are having some issues with Corey Evan, I do have an extra DC story that I was not able to get to, but we will get to that, considering we are waiting for Corey Evan to call back in. As soon as he gets back in from our satellite center in Los Angeles, we'll of course, patch him back on the air. Secretary of State John Kerry bluntly told Republicans on Wednesday that they are kidding themselves if they think a GOP president could stroll into the White House in January 2017, pick up a pen, and nullify a nuclear agreement with Iran. This is a response to that story about the 150,000+ signing against the treason for 47. It's not going to happen, Kerry told lawmakers during a frequently contentious Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing focused on the war against the so-called Islamic State. And let's see, sorry about that, folks. The top U.S. diplomats' dismissive comments came as the U.S. with its partners Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and China faced an end of March deadline for reaching a framework deal aimed at ensuring that Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon. Tehran admits to extensive nuclear facilities but claims that it would use nuclear weapons for only civilian purposes. And as I said before, folks, that Iran getting a nuclear weapon, that's going to be a sorry day in this world if we allow them to get one. All right. Oh, I think we got Corey Evan now back, so let's go ahead and go over to him. And he got tonight's Lawsuits Across America. That was already in progress. Corey, do we have you? Okay, we're still waiting for him, apparently. So, apologies, ladies and gentlemen, on that. Hopefully we can get him back here in just a moment. Sometimes the weather has a lot to do with it. It is a bit humid outside here in Southern California today. All right, want another story from the city of marijuana? Well, here's one for you from New Hampshire today. State representatives in New Hampshire on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly for a bill that would decriminalize the possession of small amounts of marijuana, although the measure is likely to face resistance from the Senate and the governor. The bill passed by the State House of Representatives by a vote of 297 to 67, which would essentially treat possessing up to a half an ounce, which would be 14 grams of marijuana, like a traffic violation. A first offense would carry a $100 fine. The measure would bring New Hampshire in line with the other New England states that have relaxed marijuana possession laws in recent years. The House in New Hampshire has passed several decriminalization bills in the past years, but they have failed to make it out of the Senate. Governor Maggie Hassan, a Democrat, has said she would also veto a decriminalization bill. Wednesday's winning margin in the Republican majority House, however, was bigger than in previous votes in favor of decriminalization, and it raises the possibility that a supermajority of lawmakers may be able to override any veto by the governor. All right, folks, I don't normally do this on the program, but we are having some technical difficulties with Corey Evan today, so we are going to try to get him back. So let's try this one more time. As Ringy-Dingy 1, Ringy-Dingy 2, as the exceptional conservative sometimes likes to say on this program. And let's see if we can get him. Ringy-Dingy 3, Ringy-Dingy 4, as we're waiting for Corey. See if we get him. desk, and I know Corey Evan is sending me through another portal saying that I am here, and we are trying to get a hold of you, sir. So hopefully we can get Corey Evan back. If we can't get Corey Evan back, then our apologies to that. Sometimes technology is not the best, and sometimes it goes against us. So we do apologize if we can't get Corey Evan back here on the program here. And what's going to happen, folks, if we can't get him back, we will go ahead and do an abbreviated Lawsuits Across America on the podcast later tonight. After our show is over, 45 minutes over, it will be available on the iHeartRadio app. And looks like we're not going to be able to get Corey Evan tonight, so our apologies on that tonight. All right, folks.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable.
I sort of expected that, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry. So our apologies on that. But just to reiterate on our breaking news tonight here on the program, the California Board of Education has suspended the state school accountability system today for 1 year to give teachers and students time to adjust to the new standardized test aligned with the Common Core state standards. What does this mean? This means, ladies and gentlemen, that they will be testing children, but the testing scores will mean nothing. They will not count. So Common Core is still delayed up to 1 year, but they're still collecting data for your children. This being said by our Global Affairs correspondent, Orlaine Kurla. Stay with the Evan Miller Report for this developing story throughout the day, evening and throughout the rest of the week here on the Evan Miller Report. And for those of you listening on podcast tonight, as promised during the live broadcast of the Evan Miller Report, due to technical difficulties during tonight's live broadcast, here is Corey Evan with tonight's Lawsuits Across America. Corey, take it away.
I thank you as always, Jay. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits Across America is now in session. It's the ultimate ruse. Lure in millions of customers with a free dating app, get them hooked on swiping, and then, when they least expect it, start charging millions of dollars, or $9.99 a pop, and laugh maniacally. Sound ridiculous? Well, last week, according to Fusion.net, that's what Florida resident Billy Warner accuses in a class action lawsuit against Tinder in the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California over its new subscription fee version, Tinder Plus, in which he accuses the company of doing that very thing. For those unfamiliar, Tinder Plus is an upgrade from the free app that allows users to undo swipes, browse profiles outside their geographic area, and enjoy unlimited likes. In the US, the company's charging up to $10 a month for users under 30, and $20 a month for those over 30. Warner says he was prompted to pay $2.99 for the service. In the complaint obtained by Fusion, Warner claims that Tinder engaged in a false advertising scheme and always had the intention of charging users money. Not only that, Warner argues that Tinder didn't properly warn customers about the pending fee. He only found out about it when he ran out of likes and a screen popped up informing him he could get unlimited likes with Tinder Plus. Warner says he's not alone in his anger and dedicated an entire half page of the lawsuit to a chart full of complaints from allegedly angry customers, taken from the Google App Store. Such as, quote, "I'm done the way you guys are trying to monetize the app is garbage. Really? I have to pay if I like too many people? Immediately uninstall. Thanks, guys." And another one, quote, $9 a month? I'd rather have ads every 20 swipes than this money grab crap. You have lost a daily user. Goodbye. Yeah, this obvious public outrage, according to Warner, is why he filed a class action, and while he doesn't know the exact number of persons in the class, he's opened it up to anyone in California who downloaded Tinder and is now mad. As for his legal claims, Warner alleges violations of the California False Advertising Act and the Business and Professions Code. Ooh boy, the Business and Professions Code. If you're gonna tout that, you better back up your claims, Mr. Warner. Representative Paul Ryan is facing a lawsuit seeking $100,000 in damages, according to ABC News, after one of his aides crashed the congressman's SUV more than a year ago, allegedly causing personal injuries to two people in another vehicle. Ryan, the chairman of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee and the former Republican vice presidential candidate in 2012, was not a passenger in the vehicle, a Chevy Tahoe, during the wreck on February 25th of last year. The vehicle was driven by Ryan's current chief of staff, Kevin Seifert, who served as the Wisconsin Republicans' press secretary at the time of the accident and was acting within the scope of his employment when the motor vehicle accident occurred, according to court records obtained by ABC News. Plaintiff Santos Perez was driving a vehicle with a passenger, Adan Bamaka Cajas, who is also a plaintiff. Seifert allegedly rear-ended Perez's vehicle. Each plaintiff is seeking $50,000 in damages. The U.S. Department of Justice is representing Ryan and Seifert and filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Washington today, arguing that, quote, absent a waiver of sovereign immunity, the federal government is immune from suit, citing federal precedent. Yeah, I would have thought that mandatory insurance laws, which I gather vary from state to state, would have covered Mr. Ryan's butt on this one, but I digress. And from Illinois, according to the Post-Crescent, the U.S. Labor Department has filed a lawsuit against 4 El Azteca restaurants in the Fox Valley to recover back wages and damages for more than 100 employees. The lawsuit alleges the restaurants failed to pay kitchen staff and servers at least minimum wage and overtime for working more than 40 hours a week. It says the restaurants didn't keep accurate records of the hours worked and that some employees were earning less than $1 an hour. The lawsuit was filed in U.S. District Court in Green Bay. The defendants in the case are El Azteca of Appleton, Inc., El Azteca of Nina, Inc., El Azteca of Kimberly, Inc., El Maya Mexican Restaurant, formerly known as El Azteca of De Per, and El Azteca Restaurants Incorporated, which was an umbrella corporation. The lawsuit further names 3 individual defendants, Marco Montalvo, Faye Montalvo, and Sergio Jimenez. El Azteca owner Marco Montalvo told Post-Crescent Media the allegations are false. He said the restaurants have been under scrutiny by the government for 2 years. Quote, so far they haven't proven anything, he said. I do everything by the law, unquote. Montalvo said he pays his employees $7.25 an hour, the federal minimum, or more, and treats them like family. He said some employees have been with him for 10 years. He says he does everything for them, and he denies all of the charges. The Labor Department has asked the court to award back wages and an equal amount in liquidated damages and prejudgment interest to kitchen staff and servers employed at the restaurants. Scott Allen, the Labor Department's Regional Director for Public Affairs and Media Relations, said the amount of the back wages hasn't been determined, but that it could be in the thousands of dollars for a majority of the employees. We're going to have to see just what they cook up in court and see if it's any good. Until then, I'm Corey Evans saying this is Lawsuits Across America. Case dismissed.
And ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening to the Evan Miller Report for tonight. For Corey Evan up in Los Angeles, I'm Jason Miller saying so long. We hope you tune in tomorrow to the program where I will have an exclusive interview with former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann. She joins me on the program to talk about the failure of both the GOP joint houses and Senates on the failure of them getting anything done. Good night, everybody.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.